Okay, so good morning, everyone, depending on your time zone. Thank you very much for joining us. This is the session on recent developments in multiple curve interest rate models. We have 4 talks today. So I will give the first talk. I am Alessandro Gnatto, and then we will have also talks by Andrea Macrina from University College London, and the University of Cape Town, Guillaume Sulda from University of Paris, and also Zorana Grchak from University of Paris. So I will move now to my talk. Okay, great. So the title of the talk is Cross-Currency Valuation and Hedging in the Multiple Curve Framework. This is a joint work with my former students, Nicole Seiffert from the LMU Munich. And so what is it about? So in this paper, essentially, we provide a general study of multi-currency model in the context of the multi-curve framework. And to be more precise, we take the results of Bilecki and Rutkowski on martingale methods for the multi-curve settings, and we link their results with the multi-currency frameworks of Peterbach, Moreni Pallavicini, and Fuji et al. From 2010. So we can provide a complete study of absence of arbitrage in a multi-currency market, and in each currency area, multiple interest rates coexist. So we have multiple curves and multi-currency simultaneously. So, and in doing this, we study also collateralization schemes in a very general situations, meaning that the cash flows of the contingent claim and the currency of denomination of the collateral can be in any configuration. So we obtain valuation formulas that are a useful foundation in order to provide curve construction techniques, bootstrapping techniques. And we provide also a solid foundation for the construction of multi-currency simulation models that can be used in order to simulate exposures in the context of XVA simulations. So, motivation. So it is by now well known that since 2007, we have been observing the emergence of several spreads between certain interest rates, in particular between overnight rates and interbank unsecured rates. And this is the picture that you see in many papers. So we have a first phase where overnight interest rates and unsecured interbank rates exhibited a negligible spread, but starting from the summer of 2007, we have seen the emergence of such important spreads. And this gave rise to the proposal of multi-curve interest rate models. And essentially all interest rate paradigms out there have been generalized to a multi-curve situation. So we have short rate approaches, we have LIBOR market model, Hit-Jarrell-Morton rational models. And these different papers emerged in the years between 2009 and 2016, essentially, and we have also 2 very comprehensive books on the topics. But the story that I would like to tell you today is slightly different, because so many people were looking at these sort of spreads here, but this is not the only spread that emerged during the crisis. So let me go back to something very, very easy. So namely, let's go back to the covered interest rate parity. So suppose that you have a certain amount in US dollars, okay? And then you can decide to invest it in 2 different ways. So the first thing you can do, you convert your amount in USD into euros at the spot rate, and then you invest at the euro deposit rate. While you do this, you also enter a forward on Euro USD, okay? And this allows you in 1 year to convert this amount here into this amount here of $5,160,000. Alternatively, what you can also do, you can just keep your US dollars and invest them at the prevailing USD deposit rate. And in theory, you should obtain the same amount. So if I use simple compounding, I obtain a relation of this sort that links the compounding in the US dollar with the forward and the spot rate on the euro area. But this is not what happened in reality. And we observe instead a picture of this sort. So instead of having the previous relationship, you observe that you need to introduce a spread on the weaker currency. So typically this spread is added on the weaker currency against the dollar in order to make this equation, in order to equate the left-hand side and the right-hand side. And this picture here shows us the value of this cross-currency basis for a given currency pair for different maturities. So again, you see up to 2007, these spreads used to be negligible, so the covered interest rate parity used to be respected, and now approximately respected. But now you see that there is a systematic violation of this. And we would like to construct a martingale pricing framework that allows us to take into account this sort of situation. So how do we do this? So we need to be a bit heavy concerning the notation, unfortunately, because we will try to be as general as possible. So I will have one currency of denomination for the evolution of our replicating portfolio. Then I will have K1, the index for of denomination of the risky assets that I am considering in each market. Then K2 is the index of the currency of denomination of the cash flow of the contract that I would like to price. Okay. And finally, K3 will be used because we will also consider collateral. So also collateral will be denominated in another specific currency. So how do we proceed? We set up a complete replication approach. So we have a fixed time horizon. We have several currency areas. And in each currency area, I have several risky assets. So this is the I asset denominated in the currency K1. I have an unsecured cash account for each currency area. And then for each risky asset, I have an associated money market account, BIK1. And of course, I need the notation for the exchange rates. So I need to introduce the usual assumptions. So the risky assets will be semi-martingales. The same holds also for exchange rate processes. And we'll also have that the bank accounts are strictly positive and continuous processes of finite variation. So I need to introduce also further notation. So I have the asset, the IF asset denominated in currency K1, including its dividend streams, which can, however, be expressed in any other currency. Okay. And this is the notation that we developed in order to express all risky assets traded natively in a certain currency into another currency. And then we also consider discounted version of these objects here. So trading strategies now will be a quite complicated object because I have a risky asset for each currency area. And then I have a plethora of investments in the bank accounts. Then by a bilateral financial contract, we simply mean an arbitrary right continuous left limited process, which is meant to capture the cash flows of the contract. And to give you an example, so this is how it works. So we have a contract, okay, which is natively denominated in currency K2, but then I convert it in K0. And the first cash flow, A0, is the price, which is converted using the spot rate in the beginning. And then I have, you see, the integral of all the future cash flows, okay, that are converted at the prevailing interest exchange rate. So now the expressions for the portfolio dynamics gets a bit tricky because you see now I have, of course, as many cash accounts as I have risky assets, and they are all converted back to the domestic currency with index E. And this is how the self-financing condition looks in a very first situation where I don't have collateral. Okay. So you see, I have also this term here, which takes into account the quadratic covariation between the exchange rates and the risky assets. So then, in order to discuss absence of arbitrage in this basic setting without collateral, I need to introduce, in line with Bilecki-Rutkowski, the concept of the netted wealth. So this is essentially a long-short position on the contingent claim with dividend stream AK2, where one of the two positions is left unhedged. And using this concept of netted wealth, we can start discussing absence of arbitrage. So we, of course, work with admissible trading strategies, and this is how we define an arbitrage opportunity in this market. So we consider the netted wealth, and we compare it with X, which is the initial endowment of the trader, which is then compounded using the interest rate of 0. So, and we have this generalization of the classical no arbitrage conditions. So how do, however, impose this concretely? So in order to impose this condition concretely, we will introduce a condition which allows us to prevent trivial arbitrage opportunities. So if you think about our textbooks, so you always have the example, okay, if you have a market where you have two different bank accounts and they grow at different interest rates, then you can create a trivial arbitrage opportunity. In order to prevent this, we force every single bank account to be used only to finance the holdings on the high risky asset. And this is typically called in the literature repo constraint, because it is linked to the concept of repo trading. So how do we prevent arbitrage in our multi-currency, multi-curve model? So we need some processes to be local martingales. So this is the condition on the risky assets. Okay, and notice that now every risky asset is discounted by means of his own asset-specific cash account. We take into account, of course, of the dividend streams, and we also take into account of the quadratic covariation between the discounted risky asset and the FX rate. Not only that, we only need to take into account that we have the exchange rates, and this is the martingale condition for the exchange rates. So this is it for the model without collateral. So we can guarantee our absence of arbitrage in a multi-currency, multi-curve setting without collateral. And then we introduce collateralization agreements. So we also have a currency index for the collateral, because the collateral can be denominated in any single currency. Okay, so say CK3 plus is the collateral the hedger receives, say CK3 minus is the collateral that the hedger posts to the counterparty, and we try to be as general as possible in terms of the collateral, because we allow for cash collateral, risky asset collateral, segregation, and rehypothecation, meaning that we will have 4 different versions of the portfolio dynamics. So the picture here below simply recalls the difference between an unsecured transaction, where you fund your trade by asking the funds to your internal treasury, and this is opposed to a perfectly collateralized transaction, where the collateralization schemes perfectly finances your transaction. So how do things change as soon as I introduce collateral? Well, the previous framework needs to be generalized. So I need to distinguish between the wealth of the hedger that represents the value of the portfolio of assets that legally belong to the hedger. This is opposed to VP that might also include the collateral which belongs to the counterparty. And of course, this is the adjustment process which takes into account the impact of the collateralization. So this is how the wealth of the hedger looks like. So I had to include now many more cash accounts, because these cash accounts here serve the purpose of modeling the collateralization scheme. So everything that starts from here refers to the collateralization. And then, of course, I have to generalize the concept of my self-financing trading strategy. And this is how the value of the hedger portfolio looks like, and this is how the adjustment process looks like. So concerning the collateral, we often have the situation where the collateral is linked to the mark-to-market of the transaction. Okay, And this particular specification of the collateral will be relevant later when we come back to the perfectly collateralized case. So in case that the collateral depends on the mark-to-market of the transaction, you typically have this shape here of the collateral, okay, where you have some haircut processes, and this is the evolution of the mark-to-market with positive and negative part. So I needed to introduce this FH here, which represents the cost, okay, of posting and receiving collateral, because if I receive collateral, okay, I have to remunerate the collateral, whereas if I post collateral, I receive an interest on the collateral. And this formula 21, which is a bit lengthy, is the most general version of the self-financing condition we come up with, okay? So these are the older terms that we had before, and now I introduced a new risky asset because now the collateral can be denominated in units of risky assets, plus I have all the terms that are coming from the additional cash accounts that I had to introduce in order to model the collateral. So then from this very general specification of the self-financing condition, okay, I can reach several conclusions for the particular cases. So for example, I have, if we have cash collateral with segregation, I arrive at this expression here for the hedge of wealth. And then I have these dynamics here for the portfolio, which under the repo constraints can be heavily simplified. Okay. The same holds also if I have rehypothecation. So rehypothecation means, let me remind you, that once you receive collateral, this amount of cash or units of the risky assets can be used in order to fund your trading activity, whereas segregation means you receive collateral, you must leave it where it is in a segregated account. And this, of course, has an implication on the shape of our portfolio. So this is, again, cash collateral with rehypothecation. Okay, and you see that now the equation look very similar between each other. And finally, I also have the case with risky asset collateral, and this proposition here covers both segregation and rehypothecation. And you see that now we have, for example, these terms here, which is the process which should be a martingale from that we considered before, and this is also the process that should be a martingale in order to guarantee that the model is free of arbitrage. So now it is time to discuss shortly replication. So this is our concept of replication that is generalized from Viletsky and Mankowski, and this is how we define the price. So in order to price, we first make the assumption that the collateral is exogenously given, so it does not depend on the mark-to-market of the transaction. And we can reach some conclusion in terms of pricing. So we obtain two versions, okay, for the cash collateral case and the risk collateral case. These look apparently like your usual risk neutral valuation formula, but we have these processes A hat here and A bar here C, which once you write down everything allows you to write 4 different pricing formulas for cash collateral and resegregation, rehypothecation, risky asset with segregation and rehypothecation. So the structure of the formula is in general similar between the different cases. So we have this, which reminds us a bit of the old school risk neutral valuation formula, and this is the term that captures the cost of the collateralization procedure. And then once we have that, we also propose a toy model for XVA simulations in a pure diffusive setting. So this is the final part of the paper. So we leave, so up to here, everything was driven by general semi-martingales. Now we switch to a pure diffusive setting where we can be more precise. So we have an arbitrary number of economies where we have many risky assets and exchange rates, and we write down the risk neutral dynamics of the risky assets. Okay, so this is for the case of the domestic currency, and you see that here I have the growth rate not given by the risk-free interest rate, but by the repo rate. The same also for the foreign risky assets, but you see here I have the quantum adjustment. And then I have here the dynamics of the exchange rate. So once I plug in this expression, I obtain expressions for my portfolio dynamics, which are much more explicit. And in particular, we are able to treat the case where the collateral depends on the mark-to-market of the transaction. So when you have collateral posted in terms of cash, and the collateral is linked to the mark-to-market of the transaction, we can reach the following dynamics for the portfolio. Okay, and now notice that we can express the dynamics of the exchange rate in terms of two collateral rates plus the cross-currency basis. This is the cross-currency basis that I was promising in the beginning when I was talking about the covered interest rate parity. So this is how the dynamics of the portfolio look like. And once you work with a perfect collateral, so this is of course now a backward stochastic differential equation, which can be solved in the suitable space of stochastic processes, and we obtain this integral representation for the value process of the BSD. And now, if the collateral is perfect, meaning that I do not have the haircut processes here, we reach the following formulas. So we reach this very general formula for a perfectly collateralized claim, where the cash flows can be in any currency and the collateral account can be in any currency. And this allows us to derive different sub-formulas. So in particular, formula 54 is the formula that you virtually have in any multi-curve interest rate model, because this is the formula for domestic cash flows collateralized in domestic currency. But of course, you can also have a domestic cash flow collateralized in foreign currency, or you can have a foreign cash flow collateralized in domestic currency. So this formula here covers all the possible cases. So what's next once you have such a modeling framework? Of course, this is just a toy model where everything is diffusive, okay? But once you have this general situation, you can think about constructing multi-currency, multi-curve Fitzgerald-Morton models. So in each currency area, you have one OIS instantaneous forward rates. Okay, so I'm mutuating here notation from our paper with Krista Cucchiero and Claudio Fontana on finance and stochastics. So, and this is instead the process for the instantaneous multiplicative spreads. So this holds for every single currency area. Now, if you recalling the Fitzgerald-Morton consistency condition, we can link the different Fitzgerald-Morton models in the single currency via the effects dynamics, and you see that here the shorthands of your OIS curves enter here, but now you might also wish to postulate a model for your cross-currency basis. But this is, of course, something for the future, and I thank you very much for your attention. And okay, so the paper is available here, and it is forthcoming on Seiffert. So now I would stop sharing the screen, and I would accept your questions.